Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into a fascinating cold case mystery straight out of the Ice Age. We're going to look at the evidence behind a massive, extinct predator that literally dominated landscapes across the globe, only to completely vanish right as human civilization was getting its footing. Yeah, we're talking about the cave hyena. Let's get right into it.
So, how did rhinos end up in an English cave? Picture this. It's the early 1800s, and you're a miner breaking through rock at Kirkstale Cave in northern England. Suddenly, you bust open a hidden cavern, and the floor is just completely covered in massive bones. At first glance, you'd probably think, okay, just some old cattle. But naturalists soon realized these bones belonged to animals that had absolutely no business being in freezing cold England. We're talking rhinos, hippos, and even elephants.
Early theories actually suggest these African animals were washed all the way up there by the biblical flood. People genuinely thought these heavy bones just floated up from the tropics. But bite marks on the bones revealed a much darker truth. When researchers looked closer, they saw distinct gnaw and chew marks. These animals hadn't drowned. They were dragged in and eaten. And the smoking gun, lying right alongside those half-eaten rhinos, were the fossilized remains of the killer itself, an ancient hyena.
To prove this, a geologist named William Buckland basically pioneered modern forensic science, and his method was wild. First, he found these hard, chalky white lumps in the cave. Suspecting they were hyena droppings, he actually went out, got a live hyena from a traveling zoo, fed it parts of a cow, and, well, he waited. Because hyenas literally crush and digest bone, their waste is absolutely packed with calcium, turning it stark white. And sure enough, the zoo hyena's droppings were a perfect match to the fossilized chalk from Kirkstale Cave. It was undeniable proof that these giant hyenas were actively hunting and living in Ice Age England.
300,000. That's how many years ago the earliest European fossils of these beasts date back to. During the Ice Age's glacial periods, so much of the Earth's water was locked up in massive ice sheets that the world was incredibly dry and dusty. This created a gargantuan biome known as the steppe tundra, a huge, freezing, dry grassland stretching continuously across Europe, Asia, and all the way into Canada. And trust me, this massive ecosystem had a diversity of life that easily rivaled today's African savanna. Across this vast expanse, the cave hyena was the undisputed king of scavengers. And their diet? Spectacularly diverse and incredibly heavy-hitting. We're looking at wild horses, red deer, reindeer, wild boar, and bison. But they weren't just eating the easy meals. Remains of massive beasts like mammoths and woolly rhinos have been found deep inside their dens. They were basically nature's ultimate cleanup crew, built to break down the absolute toughest carcasses on the tundra.
Now, here is where it gets truly chilling. Fossilized remains of 9 Neanderthals were found in Italy's Guattari Cave with puncture wounds most likely made by these large predators. Yeah, they were hunting, or at least scavenging, early humans. And they weren't exactly picky either. Skeletons found in Germany and the Czech Republic are totally covered in gnaw marks from other cave hyenas, which proves they readily engaged in cannibalism whenever the opportunity or the hunger struck. Talk about ruthless.
So how do they compare to modern spotted hyenas? Well, the physical differences are pretty striking. While a modern spotted hyena maxes out around 90 kilos, cave hyenas weighed over 100 kilos. On average, they were about 60% larger. But they were built completely differently. Cave hyenas had shorter, thicker limbs with curved upper arm bones, whereas modern ones are longer and leaner. Oh, and the forebrain? Noticeably smaller in the cave hyena. Basically, they traded lean speed for the raw, robust power you'd need to crush massive frozen bones.
That smaller forebrain actually tells us a lot, because that's the region responsible for advanced social behavior. While modern spotted hyenas are highly social hunters using temporary dens, cave hyenas were likely solitary scavengers using massive bone-filled dens. They behaved a lot more like today's solitary striped or brown hyenas. They scavenged alone or in tiny groups, and then they dragged their horrific prizes back to permanent dens that just accumulated thousands of bones over generations.
Which brings us to a massive puzzle. Was the cave hyena just a massive subspecies of the spotted hyena or a completely separate species? For decades, scientists were stumped. Were these Ice Age beasts just a beefed-up, cold-weather version of the hyenas we see on wildlife docks today? To finally settle the debate, researchers in 2020 turned to cutting-edge genetic testing.
That 2020 study first looked at mitochondria. If you remember from biology, these are structures related to ancient free-living bacteria that form a symbiotic relationship in cells.
They have their own unique DNA and reproduce asexually, making them basically a perfect time machine for tracking lineages. Well, when researchers mapped the mitochondrial DNA, they found absolutely zero clear separation between the cave hyena and the spotted hyena. It honestly looked like they were the exact same animal.
But then came the genome contradiction. Full genome studies showed they actually were a separate species. So why did the mitochondria match? The answer is gene flow. After the two species split on the evolutionary tree, they didn't just ignore each other. The mitochondrial match indicates they continued to interbreed anywhere their territories overlapped. So the solitary cave hyenas and the social spotted hyenas just kept mixing their genetic code back together over thousands of years.
And this adaptability gave them a truly global footprint. We're talking oldest remains in China dating back a staggering 2 million years. They were surviving brutal winters in England, where temps dropped below -20°C. But at the exact same time, they were thriving in North Africa, the Middle East, and even the hot seasonal grasslands of Thailand and Cambodia, coexisting right alongside tigers. They essentially conquered every climate on the map.
But, as we know, no empire lasts forever, which leads us to the fall of these giants. Around 15,000 years ago, the Ice Age wanes and the climate becomes warmer and wetter. Because of this, that massive steppe tundra starts shrinking, quickly getting replaced by expanding woodlands. With the landscape changing, the huge herds of wild horses and woolly rhinos vanished, which meant a massive, devastating decline in the cave hyena's prey. Finally, by 11,000 years ago, cave hyenas officially go extinct.
The final blows really came down to a shrinking food supply, combined with intense human-wildlife conflict. Picture a massive, starving population of 100-kilo scavengers suddenly backed into a corner. As their food disappeared, they were forced into fierce, direct competition with early humans. The archaeological record shows a huge spike in conflicts during this time. Fighting over the exact same dwindling resources, these beasts just couldn't survive the double punch of a collapsing ecosystem and human expansion.
So it leaves us with this question. If the Ice Age climate hadn't shifted, would these 100-kilo giant scavengers still be stalking through our landscapes today? It's a haunting thought, right? It really highlights the fragility of even the most dominant, adaptable predators. If the ice hadn't melted, we might still be sharing our world with these massive, bone-crushing giants. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I hope this cold case mystery leaves you looking at our ancient world in a completely different light.